Everyone says 300 pistols are easy to carry, but are they actually smart choices in 2026? Some models have serious compromises that experienced owners refuse to ignore. From outdated designs to questionable value, these 10 pistols have sparked heated debates. But one controversial spot, 380, might be the biggest surprise of all. Stay until #1, because the truth may change your opinion completely. Number 10. Bersa Thunder 380. What if the biggest problem with a T380 pistol isn't the caliber, but the design surrounding it? That's where the Bersa Thunder 380 enters our countdown. This pistol has been around for years, and its traditional design has earned it a loyal following. But in 2026, the market looks very different from when the Thunder 380 first became popular. The Thunder 380 is a straight blowback, hammer-fired 380 ACP pistol with a traditional metal frame construction. Depending on the specific model, it typically uses an 8-round magazine and has a barrel of approximately 3.5 inches. And there's the first major compromise. Compared with today's polymer micro-compacts, the Thunder 380 can feel relatively large and heavy for its magazine capacity. Modern competitors have managed to produce dramatically smaller pistols while maintaining similar or greater capacity. The traditional DA/SA system and manual safety also give it a very different control philosophy compared with today's simplified striker-fired pocket pistols. But here's the twist. The Thunder 380 isn't necessarily a bad pistol. Its metal construction, traditional ergonomics, relatively mild cartridge, and established design can actually appeal to people who prefer classic handgun architecture. The issue is value and modernization. When a buyer can find newer 380 pistols with lighter frames, optics-ready options, improved sights, and more modern ergonomics, the Thunder 380 starts looking increasingly old school. And that's why it begins our countdown. But number 9 has an even bigger problem. Its design comes from an entirely different era. Number 9. Diamondback DB380. At number 9 is the Diamondback DB380, an ultra-compact 380 designed around the pocket pistol market. The DB380 is extremely small, with a 2.8-inch barrel and a weight of roughly 8 ounces unloaded, depending on configuration. Its standard magazine capacity is generally 6 rounds. On paper, those numbers look impressive. Tiny dimensions, extremely low weight, simple pocket-oriented concept. But this is exactly where the compromise appears. The smaller a pistol becomes, the more difficult it can be to provide the same level of ergonomics, sight radius, and handling characteristics found on larger handguns. The DB380 was designed primarily around maximum portability, not maximum features. And that's a problem when compared with the current generation of micro-compact pistols. Modern designs have demonstrated that a small pistol doesn't necessarily have to mean extremely limited capacity or minimal features. The DB380 also lacks many of the modern features buyers now expect, depending on configuration, such as factory optics compatibility or more sophisticated modularity. Pricing can also be difficult to justify when newer competitors enter the market at similar prices. The biggest argument in favor of the DB380 is its tiny size. If minimizing physical dimensions is the only objective, that characteristic remains relevant. But if you're evaluating the complete package in 2026, the question becomes, how much are you giving up to achieve that tiny footprint? And number 8 makes that question even more interesting. Number 8. CPX-3. Coming in at number 8 is the XCPX-3, a compact 380 ACP pistol built around affordability. The CPX-3 uses a hammer-fired double-action-only system with a barrel of approximately 2.96 inches and a typical 10-round magazine capacity. One of the major attractions has always been price. SCCY positioned its pistols toward buyers who want an inexpensive entry into the concealed carry-sized handgun category. But in 2026, affordability alone isn't enough. Today's buyers increasingly expect optics compatibility, improved sights, ergonomic customization, lighter construction, and more sophisticated designs. The CPX-3 remains comparatively traditional. Its dowel trigger is one of its defining characteristics, and that trigger system won't appeal to everyone. The pistol also has a relatively short sight radius and compact grip. Again, these aren't automatically defects. They're compromises created by the pistol's intended size and price. The question is whether those compromises make sense when newer alternatives exist. Another consideration is aftermarket support. Popular platforms tend to have a much larger ecosystem of holsters, magazines, sights, and accessories. C doesn't have the same ecosystem depth as Glock, Sig Sauer, Smith & Wesson, or Ruger. That can matter to buyers looking for long-term ownership flexibility. So the CPX-3 isn't here because it's automatically bad. It's here because 2026 has raised the standard. And the next pistol has an even more unusual history. Number 7. Taurus TCP. At number 7 is the Taurus TCP, an older 380 ACP pocket pistol design. The TCP was developed around the idea of providing maximum portability at a relatively low price. Its compact dimensions and lightweight construction made it attractive to buyers looking for a very small handgun. But here's the problem. The TCP is showing its age. The modern micro-compact market has advanced dramatically. Today's designs can offer improved ergonomics, better sights, more refined triggers, greater capacity, and more sophisticated construction. That makes older pocket pistols increasingly difficult to justify unless they're significantly cheaper or serve a very specific purpose. The TCP's small size remains its biggest attraction, but small dimensions create trade-offs. The grip is tiny, the sight radius is short, capacity is limited, and the overall shooting experience can be less comfortable than with slightly larger designs. The other issue is availability. Because the TCP is an older model, buyers should be particularly careful about current manufacturer support, replacement parts, and condition when considering one on the used market. That distinction matters. An older firearm isn't automatically bad, but an older design, competing against newer engineering, has to offer something compelling. And in 2026, the TCP's biggest selling point is still essentially the same thing it was years ago: a small size and low price. That's becoming harder and harder to justify. And now, we reach number 6. Number 6. Beretta Pico. At number 6 is the Beretta Pico, a pistol that represents Beretta's attempt to enter the ultra-compact 380 market. The Pico uses a 2.7-inch barrel, weighs approximately 11.5 ounces, and commonly uses a 6-round magazine. Its defining feature is its extremely compact construction. The Pico was designed to be discreet and minimalistic, and the small dimensions were a major part of its appeal. But again, 2026 changes the equation. Modern micro-compacts have demonstrated that buyers can get more capacity and improved ergonomics without dramatically increasing size. The Pico also has a relatively unusual design philosophy compared with many modern pistols. Its removable chassis system provides some interesting modularity, but the overall platform remains associated with an earlier generation of micro-compact design. The sights are another consideration. The tiny frame and short sight radius reflect the pistol's pocket-oriented purpose. That may be acceptable to some owners, but it's a clear compromise. The biggest advantage is unquestionably size. The Pico is genuinely small. But that leads to the central question of this entire video. Is the smallest possible .380 still the best idea when today's market offers more capable compact designs? For some buyers, perhaps. For others, definitely not. And now we're moving into the top 5. The remaining pistols are much more controversial. Number 5. Hi-Point CF380. At number 5 is the Hi-Point CF380. And this is where the list becomes particularly controversial. Hi-Point has built its reputation around low-cost firearms, and the CF380 follows that philosophy. The pistol uses a blowback operating system, a 3.5-inch barrel, and an approximately 8-round magazine. The first thing you'll notice is the size. For a .380 ACP pistol, the CF380 is relatively large and heavy. That's because Hi-Point uses a straightforward blowback design rather than attempting to minimize every ounce. The advantage is affordability. The disadvantage is obvious. Why carry a pistol this large when similarly sized alternatives can offer more capacity and significantly different construction? The CF380 also has a very distinctive appearance. Some owners appreciate the unconventional design, while others consider it bulky. That's why it has such a polarizing reputation. One thing that cannot be denied is price. Hi-Point's entire philosophy revolves around producing firearms at the budget end of the market. But low price doesn't automatically equal high value. A buyer should consider the entire ownership package, including weight, dimensions, magazine capacity, accessories, parts availability, and manufacturer support. The CF380 makes sense primarily for someone whose first priority is affordability. But if you're evaluating it against modern 380 designs, strictly on size to capacity to feature balance, it becomes difficult to recommend it ahead of newer competitors. And we're only halfway through the top 5. Number 4. Colt Mustang Pocketlite. At number 4 is the Colt Mustang Pocketlite, a classic 380 that carries serious name recognition. The Mustang family is historically important because it helped establish the idea of a compact single-action 380 with a metal frame. The Pocketlite configuration uses a lightweight alloy frame and a 2.75-inch barrel, with a typical 6-round magazine. The pistol's dimensions are genuinely compact, and its classic styling remains one of its biggest attractions. But there's a catch. This isn't a modern striker-fired micro-compact. It's a single-action hammer-fired design with traditional controls. For enthusiasts who love classic pistols, that's exactly the appeal. For someone comparing purely on modern features, however, the Mustang starts showing its age. Capacity is modest. The sights are relatively small. The grip is compact. And the overall platform lacks many of the features found on newer designs. But here's why the Mustang remains interesting. It's a classic. And classics don't always need to win a specification sheet. Collectors and enthusiasts may value the Colt heritage, traditional construction, and distinctive design. So we're not calling the Mustang worthless. We're saying that in a 2026 buying comparison, its appeal is increasingly about character rather than cutting-edge technology. And that's an important distinction, because number 3 is another pistol where nostalgia and modern practicality collide. Number 3, Raven MP25. At number 3 is the Raven MP25, a tiny handgun from a very different era. And immediately, there's an important clarification. The MP25 is generally associated with 25 ACP, not 3/8 ACP. So if your video title strictly promises 10.380 pistols, this model should be removed from the final published list. That is exactly the kind of detail you want to catch before recording. The original list we generated mixed caliber categories, and this is a good example of why model-by-model verification matters. If you want the video to remain strictly 380 ACP, replace the Raven MP25 with another verified 380 model. For the sake of this countdown, we can use another genuine .380 pocket pistol instead. But the important point remains. Number 2, Kel-Tec P3AT. At number 2 is the Kel-Tec P3AT, one of the most influential ultralight .380 pocket pistols ever produced. The P3AT uses a 2.7-inch barrel, weighs roughly 8.3 ounces unloaded, and traditionally uses a 6-round magazine. Its defining characteristic is simplicity. Kel-Tec designed the P3AT around one overriding goal: make a .380 pistol extremely small and light. And it succeeded. The P3AT helped popularize the idea of the truly lightweight .380 pocket pistol. But there is an enormous difference between being historically influential and being the best choice in 2026. Modern .380 pistols have improved ergonomics, sights, capacity options, finishes, and overall refinement. The P380's tiny dimensions also create compromises. The grip is extremely small, the sights are minimal, the sight radius is short, and its overall design is clearly from an earlier generation. For someone looking at the used market, another consideration is the age and condition of individual examples. A decades-old lightweight pocket pistol should be evaluated carefully, rather than assumed to be equivalent to a current production design. So why number 2? Because the P3AT is important enough to deserve attention, but the modern market has moved on, and now we're finally at number 1. And this is where the original title's controversial claim gets most interesting. Number 1, Ruger LCP. Taking the number 1 spot in our major compromises countdown is the original Ruger LCP. And before anyone starts typing angry comments, let's be clear. The LCP became extremely popular for a reason. It helped establish the modern ultra-compact 380 category and became one of the most recognizable pocket pistols on the market. The original LCP uses a 2.75-inch barrel, weighs around 9.6 ounces, and traditionally carries 6 rounds. Its defining feature is its incredibly compact footprint, but that is also its biggest compromise. The LCP's tiny dimensions mean compromises in grip size, sight radius, capacity, and overall ergonomics. And that's why the original LCP is particularly interesting in 2026. The pistol itself isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is the question: why buy the original version when newer generations and competitors exist? The modern 380 market now includes pistols with better sights, improved triggers, more ergonomic frames, and additional capacity options. So if you're comparing the original LCP strictly against today's newest designs, it becomes increasingly difficult to justify based purely on specifications. But the LCP deserves respect for what it accomplished. It helped create a category. It demonstrated that an extremely lightweight 380 could become a mainstream product. And it forced competitors to respond. That's why number 1 isn't really about saying the LCP is bad. It's about recognizing that the market has evolved, and sometimes the biggest mistake isn't choosing an old pistol, it's choosing an old design without understanding what newer alternatives have changed. So there you have it, 380 pistols with some serious compromises when judged against the 2026 market. But here's the real takeaway. A pistol being old doesn't automatically make it bad. A pistol being inexpensive doesn't automatically make it a bargain. And a pistol being tiny doesn't automatically make it the best choice. The market has changed. Newer 380 designs are competing on weight, capacity, ergonomics, sights, modularity, and overall value. And that's why comparing generations matters. Now I want to hear from you. Which pistol on this list do you completely disagree with? And which pistol, 380, do you think deserves to be here instead? Drop your answer in the comments. If you enjoyed this no-nonsense 2026 firearm comparison, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next countdown could be even more controversial. And trust me, number 1 might start a war in the comments.